I'm thrilled to have her here. So we are going to do three different types of eggplants, and depending on the timing today, we may do some little extras afterwards. We're going to do a baba ganoush, which is an eggplant dip from the Mideast. We are going to do a stuffed eggplant, and we're going to do a fried eggplant. And we're also going to experiment with that fried eggplant and bake some of it and fry some of it for those of you that object to using uh, fried foods. We're also going to do a creme brulee, which is very easy. I realized this morning that my torch is not here, which is fine because most of us don't have little torches at home. And it's very easy to just put the finished creme brulee once it's cooled underneath a broiler in an oven and let the sugar caramelize that way. And if you don't have the sugar, it's all right. It's still good. It's just creme brulee is just a fancy name for custard. So without further delay, let's start. We're not going to do one recipe at a time because that would take us all day. So I will say what recipe I'm working on at a given moment, and we're going to go back and forth. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take an eggplant and cut it and slice it for the eggplant stacks, the fried eggplants. I don't mind the skin, but a lot of people prefer not to have the skin on the eggplant. And so I'm going to roughly peel it today. I, uh, the skin has a lot of nutrients in it, and it is edible and fairly digestible. But some people just object to it. But I think this dish, this fried eggplant that we're going to be doing, is just as good with the skin on it. So I'm not being too particular about getting every little piece off. I'm just doing it. Eggplant is a fruit. It's actually kind of a berry. It's got the seeds inside it. It comes originally from Southeast Asia or South Central Asia in the area of India, and it was brought over to Europe by Arab traders a long time ago, and then from it spread to Africa via the Persians. So it has a long culinary history. It's a great food because it has a lot of minerals in it and vitamins. It also has a capability of absorbing flavors. It's like a sponge, so it'll absorb any sauce, and that's why you see it in every different cuisine. So little trick. I'm using my chef's knife, rather than holding it like this or like this, which doesn't give me much control, I'm going to pinch the knife like so, and that gives me fairly good control. I'm going to cut the eggplant in thin slices, about, I would say, a quarter of an inch, between half an inch, if you can see that. And what we're going to do is we're going to salt them. And people may want to do that or may not want to do it because they think it's going to be too salty. I am going to rinse the eggplant afterwards. And the reason that I'm salting it is that the seeds tend to be bitter and the eggplant has a lot of moisture. So by salting it, I can express some of the moisture. I pre-cut some eggplant that I'm going to go through this again later, but I pre-cut some just to experiment, and one medium eggplant yielded this much liquid after salting. And we're going to see more of it now with what I'm going to be doing. Let me just put this off to the side here. I almost feel like this is my kitchen. I know I've already learned where many things are kept here. So if anybody ever needs a kitchen gadget, call Ellen. She's got it all. Great. So I'm going to put these in the colander. I'm going to spread them out at first because I want to be able to put a little bit of salt on all of them. And you can omit this step. It's just your preference. And I'm just doing it on one side because I don't want them too heavily salted. And then I'm just tossing it in here, and we're going to set this aside. This is going to be the last dish that we make, the fried or baked eggplant. So I'm going to put that aside. And those of you that are following us and are cooking, we're going to go on to the creme brulee. I think dessert is very important, and nobody can wait till the end. So for the creme brulee, the ingredients that we need are cream, 4 cups of cream, vanilla bean or vanilla extract. My recipe said vanilla sugar, but we're using plain sugar, and 6 egg yolks. Now, I want to tell everybody here, just as we get started, these recipes are a guide. I don't cook from recipes, except for the very first time that I make something just to try it out. This is a very basic creme brulee. You can play with it. You can add, let's say you like amaretto. You can add a teaspoon of amaretto to your mix and reduce the sugar by a little bit. You can put berries on the bottom of the baking ramekin, and then you have creme brulee with berries on it. So the sky is the limit. Look at pictures, look at things online. You can innovate any way you want. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to separate the egg yolk. And many ways of doing this. Traditionally, you want to have 3 dishes, perhaps. One for the egg whites, one for the egg yolk, and one just in case, one to break the eggs over in case of an accident. There are many ways of separating the egg yolks. You don't need to have a special implement for it. So the easiest is using your fingers. I broke the egg, and I'm just going to scoop out the egg yolk and go from hand to hand and let the egg white fall. And so I have my egg yolk, and I'm putting my egg white. Also, for those of you that like to check the eggs for blood spots, it's a good idea to do it separately, 1 egg at a time. You don't have to put it all in one plate and contaminate the entire bowl. So that's another way of doing it. You could have done what I just did with my hands with the eggshells, but I think this works really well. And I rarely break an egg yolk like that. And if I did break it, then it doesn't matter because I still have my separate egg whites, which I can use for meringues with a little bit of sugar, or egg white omelets. I love them, egg white omelets. And if you have an extra yolk in there, 1 yolk for 6 eggs, and it's great. It gets a nice color. So the other thing that we're going to do before I start beating the eggs is I have a we're not using 4 cups of cream. Ellen and I decided we were going to go a little light, and so we're using a pint of whole milk, and we're also using a pint of half and half. I have made the creme brulee with milk only, and it came out fine. It maybe wasn't quite as sturdy, if you will, or stiff as it would be if we had cream only, but the taste was fine, and I didn't mind it. And you know what? I love to eat, so if I can save a little bit of calories from fat by using lighter ingredients, why not? So I'm going to put this on the stove right now, get it warmed up, and I'll be back in 2 seconds. We're going to
but he's in the shower. He's got a doctor's appointment. I'll tell him to call you. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
There we go. Michael. It's a very complicated stove we have here, at least for me. Okay, that's good. So we're heating up the milk, and you always want to keep your eye on it. And we're going to use vanilla beans.
Lenny, I want to tell you that on this setting, it's very hot.
Let's go to 7.
Okay, that would be a high medium.
That's good.
Okay.
So I'm going to be conscious of what we're doing on the stove, but I'm also going to use a vanilla bean. So this is a vanilla bean, and yes, they are expensive if you buy them at Publix or a local health food store. However, you can get a bunch of them on Amazon. I checked for about $11, $12. It comes out to about $1 a piece. You don't need them, but you could use vanilla extract, but I think they're fun to use. So in order to use the vanilla bean, you slit it just like I did, and then you open it up and you find the delicious seeds, this slurry in here, and you take your knife and very carefully you just scrape the seeds. And for this recipe, I happen to like using the vanilla bean because I like the little dots in the custard. I like to see it. So this is what I have here. And I'm going to just put this right into the custard that we're baking. And what do you do with the vanilla bean once you use it? Well, you can do as I do. I keep them in vodka, or you can put them into sugar. And sugar will absorb the moisture from the bean. It's a desiccant, so it'll be fine. And then you'll have vanilla flavored sugar over time. So look at the little dots in there. That's what I like in the custard. I like to see that. But you could substitute 1 teaspoon of vanilla for that, or like I said, a teaspoon of amaretto or Cointreau. It depends on the flavor profile that you want. This is, again, a very basic recipe for making a custard. So I'm throwing my bean back into my vodka with the others. And these actually came from Madagascar. One of my daughter's friends was traveling in Madagascar, and the first thing I said was, bring me some vanilla. And she did, and I've had these for a long time. The bottle was filled. Sometimes I just use the extract from here. Again, you can use the store-bought, but whenever I can, I like to use things that I have made so that I know what are the primary ingredients. Generally, I shop the outside of the store, except for maybe if I'm looking for canned beans or grains that are in the interior. I try to shy away from prepared foods. One, because I think I can make it and probably make it better. And two, I just try to not use processed foods. So I've got my 6 egg yolks in here. I am a little lazy, so I am going to use an electric hand mixer. You can also use a KitchenAid. You can do it by hand on a whisk. And whatever is comfortable for you would work. And I'm going to mix this up with the sugar. And we're going to get a light color. And that's what I'm looking for, is a light color on the eggs. Just checking the milk. I don't want it to boil over. So I have 1 cup of sugar. And I'm going to start mixing. And I'm just adding the sugar a little bit at a time. You see that change in color? We have a nice pale yellow. That's what you want. My sugar is very well mixed. It's a little thick, but that's okay because I'm going to be putting the milk in there. Now, one thing that I like about this mixing bowl is it has a little spout, so it'll be easy for us to pour it into our ramekins. Checking on the milk again. I also have some garlic that we were roasting today, and it just smells awesome. and we'll come to that in a little bit. I'll explain what I did, but those are 2 garlic bulbs that I started roasting this morning. So I've got some creme brulee dishes. These were purchased a long time ago at Williams Sonoma. You can use anything. These are just regular ramekins. The reason I like this is because it's shallower, so it will cook more evenly, and also you get a better surface area to sprinkle sugar on afterwards and caramelize. So that's really a main feature of the creme brulee. So our milk is not yet boiling, and I want to get it just to boiling. When I start seeing bubbles, I'm going to take it off. I think we put it on high. There we go. Are there any questions? Send in your chat to Marcy, and this would be a good opportunity to answer any questions on the creme brulee. Also, for decoration on a creme brulee, what I've done in the past is I'll take a strawberry and cut it. Keep the stem on, but cut it sliced with stems, and then you just push it around. Do you have a strawberry here?
I do, Lenny.
We're going to look and see if we have a strawberry. I'll show you what I mean. And I just put 1 strawberry on top. It looks very elegant, and I like doing that. So here we have the strawberry. Okay, I'm seeing some smoke or steam coming off of the milk, so it's going to be ready shortly. I don't want to scald it. But I think I have a quick second to cut this strawberry. If you follow me, Ellen. I lay it down. Always when I cut, I'm careful to keep my fingers out of the path of the knife. I have not cut the stem, but I just cut it like so. I make little incisions, and then I just spread it. I just squeeze it and spread it apart, and look how pretty that is. And you can lay that right on top of the creme brulee. We'll use this later on. I'll show you what I mean. I'll just put it aside for right now. Let me just check this 1 second. Not quite hot enough. I was hiding the fact that I put my fingered glove in there, but if I don't have a thermometer, that's always a good measure. So I used to think creme brulee was so difficult to make, and it's just it's a myth. It's very easy. You're making a custard. It's sugar, eggs, and milk or cream. And if you left out the sugar and you added salt and pepper, you could make a savory creme brulee. Maybe put some caramelized onions on the bottom of it. And then
Lenny, not to interrupt, but do you need grease? Sorry about the dog. That was a question that came through.
Marcy, we're going to
no,
answer the questions.
yeah, what was the question? I didn't hear it.
Do you need grease
Grease.
to grease your ramekin?
No, because you're going to be eating right out of them. You could, but you're not turning anything over, so no, I never have. I don't think the recipe calls for it either. Nope. No reason to do that. Okay, we're starting to see some bubbles here, so it's almost at the boiling point, which is great. I don't really want it to boil. I just want it to be warm, very warm. And you can see how some of the vanilla has coagulated there or clumped together. I'm not worried about that because I'm going to mix it in with the eggs. Again, this is a great saucepan because it's got a lip on either side that'll make pouring a lot easier. So going back to our eggs, I'm going to add the cream a little bit at a time, and I'm going to keep this on low to medium speed. And the reason that I'm doing it in a little bit at a time is I don't want to cook the eggs by adding too much milk all at one time. There you go, nice and frothy. I'm going to taste it because I want to make sure that it's not too sweet or sweet enough. Plus, I didn't really have breakfast today, so this would be a good excuse. I've got a lot of froth on the top. Right here, I've got, oh man, I could just drink that all day. A little bit of rum, and we'll be happy. So that is perfect. And what I'm going to do is pour it into the ramekins. And I'm not worried about filling the ramekin up because this really isn't going to puff up or anything like that. It's just going to solidify. I don't know if the right word is solidify, but it's going to set as we bake it. So we're going to bake it in a bain-marie. What that means is we're going to have water alongside these dishes. And what that does is it helps distribute it more evenly, and it will also prevent the creme brulee from cracking. And I have another little ramekin here. So this may, it's going to make about 6 of them based on the measurements that I gave you. Sometimes a little more, a little less. It just depends on how accurate we were measuring. And by the way, this is the only recipe that we're making today that strives for accuracy. Anything else that we're making, just go with the flow. So I've got 6 creme brulee molds. I'm going to go ahead and put them in the oven right now. And then I'm going to take a cup and pour the water into the pan once it's in the oven, because it's otherwise I'm worried that I'm going to spill it. So I'm going to set the oven. What did our recipe say? 325. I generally, since I went to culinary school, I've generally cooked on convection. So if you have that, don't be scared to cook on convection at that temperature. So 350 is good, even though. So when you cook on convection, it generally lowers at 25 degrees, but I told Ellen to set it at 350, and we're going to cook it at 350, which is 325 convection. And the reason it reduces the temperature automatically is that a convection oven merely circulates the air. So while you're circulating the air, you're getting better coverage of the surface that you're cooking. And so therefore, it'll cook a little bit faster, and the ovens are programmed to automatically reduce the temperature. But I want the heat for 2 reasons. One is I like the heat, and I'm thinking that it's going to cook a little faster for us. And that's a good thing today under our circumstances, because I want you to see what it'll look like. So see, this is a lot easier to pour some water about halfway up the side of the cookie sheet. I'm going to put in a little bit more water. And it's a lot easier to do that than to walk across the kitchen with a tray filled with water. So this water is halfway up the cookie sheet. If you are using this type of ramekin, I would suggest that you use a roasting pan so that you can get the milk halfway up the side of the roasting pan, or of the ramekin. So we're good here. We're going to set the timer for 40 to 45 minutes. We'll set it for 30. and then we will check it in 30 minutes and see what it looks like. Any questions on the creme brulee? I'd be happy to entertain them before we go forward. So that's our creme brulee. So one of the skills that was inculcated in me as a lawyer, but more so as a chef in culinary school, was to have everything ready and organized in advance. So before I started today, I set aside everything that we're going to need for our recipes. I've got it right here. I'm going to go into the light where you have better light. You can see what I did today. So we have the ingredients for our baba ganoush. I earlier cut an eggplant in half and put it in the oven face down. You could oil it, you could not oil it, whatever you desire. And I baked them, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute. So I've got my eggplants. I have a third cup of tahini, and any brand that you like is good. I find that if I go to one of the Mideastern shops, we have plenty of those in Jacksonville, that you get a nice tahini product imported from the Mideast. And I enjoy that more than going to the regular grocery store. So one of the ingredients was garlic, 3 garlic cloves. And I said to Ellen, let's go do, I've never done it. This is my first time. I've seen it done on TV, but I've never roasted garlic, but I know it's delicious. So I put a bulb of garlic in here, whole head of garlic, I guess, with a little bit of olive oil. Oh my God, it's so fragrant. And I just put it into the aluminum foil. The paper just comes off. And what I've seen them do on TV is just cut it and then they squeeze it. Oh man, it works. As seen on TV, it does work. So I squeeze it, and this is going to be some of what we use for the baba ganoush. I'm going to use the roasted garlic. It'll give it a little more sweetness and less of a bite than the raw garlic. And you could also use that, mash it up, mix it with a little bit of salt if necessary, pepper, oil, lemon juice perhaps, and you've got a nice spread for bruschetta or anything like that. I love garlic, and I'm told that it's really good for the blood circulation as well, as are onions, if you can tolerate them. So I've got 2 fresh lemons, which we're going to juice. I've got a ½ teaspoon of cumin, a ½ teaspoon of salt. I've got cayenne and parsley and some paprika, and of course, olive oil. Use the extra virgin olive oil that all the chefs on TV tout. It makes a difference. The other stuff is very light, and you don't even taste the flavor of the olive. If you use the extra virgin olive oil, you'll definitely taste the flavor. So I bake these eggplants, and I bake them until they look like this, kind of shriveled up. And we're going to scoop them out. The inside, I did not oil these. I forgot to oil them, but they're fine. We're going to be adding oil. I put them face down on parchment paper so they did not stick. You can see how juicy they are. They're beautiful. I'm looking forward to using them in our recipe today. So I am going to put them off to the side first and scoop them. Well, I'm going to get rid of this extra liquid, just because that usually is associated with bitterness. And you can make this baba ganoush however you want. You can do it in a chunky style, or you can do it a creamy style. We're gonna start in a chunky way, and let's see how it looks. And if Ellen and I decide we want to go a little more smooth, we're going to put it into a blender. She has a, what is it? It's a Ninja, but you can also use a food processor, or, you could probably use a mixer as well. So I'm just taking all the flesh out, leaving the skin intact. And it smells delicious as roasted eggplant, and I haven't done anything to it yet. So one dish, here's a delicious dish if you want a quick appetizer or a nice side dish. Take a whole eggplant and pierce it with a fork, rub it with olive oil, and stick it in the oven until it shrivels up, probably 30 to 40 minutes. When it comes out, let it cool just a few minutes, make a slit in it, and then push it open like a baked potato and drizzle some tahini on it. And that is a very, very popular dish in the Mideast, and it's absolutely delicious. So here's my 2 eggplants that I have. I'm going to add the 1/3 cup of tahini. And I've got a very fancy spatula here. I want to get every last bit of it. I love a good tahini. And I'm going to add the salt and garlic, cumin, just a teaspoon. Is that what it was? A teaspoon, a half teaspoon. And a little bit of cayenne. I'm just going to sprinkle a dash of cayenne. We decided we like hot here, so we're going to just put a sprinkle of Tabasco, of hot sauce, a little bit of paprika, kind of to give it a smoky flavor. And we're going to use lemon. Now, let me put this off to the side. I thought I was short on eggplant. I just found another half. Your fingers are really the best for it. I tried the spoon, but this is really the best way of doing it. Let me throw that away. I'm mixing it up. Let me put that aside while I do the lemons. Now, one thing, a trick that I like, and I learned this from Margot Ruby's Catering here in Jacksonville. When they do Hamantaschen at Purim time, they make the little cookies. They put the recipe calls for an orange to be put into the food processor with the dough. And the first time I did that, I thought, well, that's pretty gross. Why would I want to put an orange in there? And I did, and it worked out well. A couple weeks ago, I made some hummus, and it was missing something. And I put a little orange in there, and it perked it right up. I'm not going to put the whole lemon in there, but what I am going to use is a zester that I have somewhere here. I thought, here it is. This is what I use for zesting. It's got 4 little 5 prongs, almost like a fork. And I'm just going to zest one of the lemons, and I'm going to actually throw this into the baba ganoush in addition to the lemon juice that the recipe calls for. And again, I purposely didn't write this down, not because I'm trying to keep secrets, but because I'm trying to demonstrate that the recipes are just a guide. It's a jump-off point. And you should make every recipe your own. Just put that in there. And now I'm gonna squeeze some lemon juice. If you don't have a juicer like this, you can also use your fingers. And I'm gonna run it through my fingers rather than getting a strainer dirty. And I'll catch the seeds with my hands. This is one reason I like to wear gloves when I'm making a few things, because I don't have to get my hands dirty with everything. Okay, so And again, experiment. You might want to try one lemon and one orange, a lemon and a lime, just little things like that. Change the flavor profile, and people will say, "Oh, that's the best dip I've ever had. What did you do? What did you do?" And you don't have to tell them. You just say, "Oh, no, it's my own way of doing it." And that's the way you can make a recipe your own. I really believe in that, that, we can all of us have it within us. We can all read and follow a recipe, but use our creativity. Do something that's just a little different that people will remember about you by. These are good soft lemons. I don't necessarily need the juicer. So I'm getting a lot of juice this way too, just squeezing it. And again, catching the seeds in my hands. One more. I did get a seed in there. I'll pick it up. One seed is not so terrible. Okay. So now I have all the ingredients in the baba ganoush. I can mix it like that and break it up, but I think we're going to put it into the Ninja and see how it all emulsifies and blends well. I have not yet put in any olive oil, and the reason for that is that I'm waiting to put the olive oil in at the last moment and drizzle it in so that it'll emulsify properly. I take one glove off. All right, I need technical help here. Look at that. Just pouring it in here. Trying to get every bit of that peanut in here and all the other deliciousness. It's a pretty cool machine. I see it has blades up and down the shaft, so it's not like a normal blender with one blade at the bottom. So this should work really well, really nicely. All right, let me put this aside. And Ellen, I'm going to need a, is there an opening there so that I can drizzle something into it? There we go, look at that. All right, I'm gonna turn it on. Okay, and I'm gonna add a little bit here of olive oil. Okay. And you can see I have a nice dippy kind of texture. Look in here a second. Release. I'm gonna take a spatula and clean the sides down so we can get as much goodness as we can. Pulse it a couple more times. And my friends, we now have a wonderful dish that we can serve a nice dip, can go on top of a salad. How do I list it? Just there we go. Let's pour it into a serving dish. If you like something that's smoother, you can add more juice to it or water, or maybe I can see some people putting something like ouzo in, some kind of alcohol maybe that has a fennel or licorice type flavor. You can do anything you want. And here's this dip. Look at it. It is just awesome. And you finish it off. We're going to put a little bit of olive oil on top. just a little bit. We're gonna do some paprika. You could do cayenne, but I like the color of the paprika. I've got some parsley here. You could chop it. You could put a few leaves on there whole. Just break it up, whatever you want. A little bit of parsley. And then my favorite, za'atar. Za'atar is an Israeli spice mix or Mideastern spice mix, which has sesame seeds, oregano, thyme, hyssop, and sometimes some sumac. This one doesn't have sumac. The Lebanese version has sumac. It's a little redder, but it's a wonderful spice. You can put this on chicken and roast it, on top of hummus, on top of feta cheese with some olive oil, anywhere, and I just love it. It's a just delicious flavor, and it reminds me of my travels to Israel. And finally, the crown, the rimonim, pomegranate seeds. And here, my friends, you have a quick and easy homemade baba ganoush. You don't have to go to the store to buy baba ganoush. You can make it yourself. The most difficult part and time-consuming part of this was cutting the eggplant and roasting it for 30, 40 minutes. Any questions? And this is going to be saved for lunch.
Lenny, somebody had asked how much olive oil to use.
Like my grandmother used to say, some. So you decide. You decide. You don't want to take away from the flavor of the eggplant, but you also don't want the dish to be dry and tasteless. So
There were a few other questions real quick. How long does the garlic roast in the oven?
I roasted the garlic till it was fragrant, till we could smell it, which was today, it was about 45 minutes to an hour. It was on 375 for that long.
Okay,
What
and
else?
then another question came about garlic. They can't tolerate garlic, but they wanted to know if you can use garlic infused olive oil instead.
Sure, why not? Try it. Or if you can't tolerate the natural garlic, I don't know if maybe you can tolerate the garlic powder. That could be a possibility also.
Okay, another question, can you use pine nuts on top?
You could put anything, absolutely. I would roast the pine nuts a little bit, sesame seeds perhaps, anything.
Okay.
Anything. I love it. I love that.
Another one is, if eggplant is very brown from roasting, do you still use that part that is dark brown?
If eggplant is very
brown from roasting, do you still use that part that is dark brown?
sure, you might want to just taste it, make sure it's not burnt. But if it's dark, it's not a problem.
Okay. And then there were two other questions. What temperature should the oven be on for roasting the eggplant? And what was the spice that you put on top?
The roasting temperature was 375 is what we did. It's written on the baba ganoush recipe, and I'll do it. Oh. It's what did I write? 375. The recipe says 15 to 30 minutes. We did it longer. We realized that the eggplant in this oven wasn't shriveled up enough and didn't look soft. You want the interior to be soft so that when you touch it with your hands, it just comes right off the skin. And the spice that I put on is za'atar, Z''A''TAAR. And in Jacksonville, you can buy that at any of the Mideastern grocery stores. You just go in there and you tell them you want some za'atar. Or if you travel to the Mideast, you can always bring some back. But I've gotten it both ways in the markets in the Middle East as well as locally sourced. All right, let's, any other questions? Great, let's go and look and see how our creme brulee is doing. I see some bubbles on top, which is good, and they're just baking away, so they're doing what they need to be doing. We're just letting it be. 325, it says 9 more minutes. Just looking at it, I think we're going to give it more than 9 minutes, but let me start the next recipe for the, or work on the next recipes, and then we'll check this again and decide if we need more time. So when we started this morning, I salted the eggplant slices. Look at all the liquor that it has given up. So I'm going to keep those still salted for a little longer, but I'm also now going to take an eggplant, out of an eggplant for our stuffed eggplant dish. So I have this one that I've done, but I saved one that I'm going to do for us now. Need to get that eggplant. Okay. So this one's a nice big eggplant. This one could feed as many as 4 people when we stuff it. And mind you, I am not, once again, I'm not following the recipe that you were provided. I'm following a technique. And the recipe is yours as a guide and for you to make your own. That recipe, by the way, goes back to the 70s. There was a restaurant in Ithaca, New York called the Moosewood Restaurant. It was kind of like a vegetarian haven in the day. Everybody in the Northeast knew about it. And even then, although I was on track to go to law school, I always thought, man, I'd love to have a restaurant like it. And I envisioned a place where you would walk in, there would be 5, 6 tables and a chalkboard, and they wrote whatever the menu of the day was. And they published many cookbooks. They're really pretty good vegetarian cookbooks. They're a little outdated now just because of the techniques. For instance, some of the cream soups or whatnot, they'll tell you to make it and they'll pour it in a blender and pour it back in the pot and go back and forth. Now we have immersible blenders. You just have to read it and adapt them to the technology that we have now. But sometime in the around 2000 something or other, I finally went to Ithaca and went to the Moosewood restaurant, and I was so disappointed because it was not what I envisioned. It was very modern, very sparkling clean, no blackboard menu, but the recipes from all the Moosewood cookbooks are great. And this one is comes from the very first Moosewood cookbook. And it's on 2 pages. There's 3 different types of eggplant recipes. If you're the one person that likes to follow a recipe, then you've got 3 different styles to choose from. So what we're going to do, let me put my gloves on. We've all become hypersensitive. In Florida, by the way, the rule for the restaurant industry is that you need to wear gloves if you're going to be touching a food that is not cooked. Go to a restaurant and see how many times that's observed. But if you're going to cook something, you don't need to wear gloves. But in this case, I will. I have a nice sharp knife. Remember, I'm getting a good hold on the tang of the knife, so I've got control. Cutting it in half. Beautiful white eggplant. I am going to take my paring knife and I am going to, at an angle, split the eggplant like so. And I'm cutting fairly deep. I'm being careful not to cut the skin, but if I cut the skin, it's not terrible. And then I'm going to run one slice down the middle. Again, at an angle. And don't ask me what angle it is. I don't have a protractor here, but I'm kind of trying to follow by eye the roundness of the skin. So I'm going to go from there with a spoon, and I'm just going to start with the spoon and just pull it right out. Look at that, it's beautiful. And then I'll take the spoon and scrape some of it. I want some eggplant left on the side, some of the meat left, because I don't want it to be floppy. I want it to hold up in the oven once I stuff it. And the same here. Put the spoon underneath, my thumb on there as a lever, and I just pull, and it comes out pretty easily because of the slit that I made. Again, I'm going to scoop it out. Now there are male and female eggplants, and you don't know what they are until you cut into them. The male eggplants have a lot of seeds in them. The females have a lot of seeds in them. The male eggplants have a little less, but the seeds aren't going to hurt you, and they're fine. So here we've got our eggplant. I'm going to move these off to the side because I'm going to use this to salt these little ones. And because I'm salting the eggplant cubes for a little bit, excuse me, I'm not going to add salt till the very end of the recipe. I'm going to taste it and decide what I need. So all I'm doing here is just cutting it in small cubes. It's up to you how you want your stuffed eggplant to be. You may want it chunky. You may want it smooth. I happened, in preparation for today, I made some eggplant, a stuffed eggplant the other night. I cut it just like this. I cooked it down. It got soft. I added some cheese like we're going to do. And by the time I took it off the fire, it was fairly smooth, almost had the consistency of a very thick oatmeal, but it was delicious. It was absolutely delicious. So it just, you experiment and you see how you like to do it. And if you want it, if you want it chunky and the first time you do it, it doesn't come out chunky, then the next time just cut bigger pieces of eggplant. That's all there is to it. I love my chef's knife. I use this for pretty much everything. No brand specific, just the shape of this knife. It's got a nice long blade. It's comfortable to hold. Has a good weight. So I've got here my eggplant cubes. I'm going to sprinkle them with salt. And I'm going to toss them. And I'm going to set these aside for a little bit while we go on to the other things. Let me get my tray with all my ingredients for the stuffed eggplant. Right here. So early on, when I put all my ingredients together, let's go over the ingredients. Obviously the eggplant, and in this case, I did not put mushrooms, but I did put carrots and celery. Again, don't ask how much, it's up to you. If you like a particular vegetable and want a lot of it, put it in there. In this case, I happen to use 2 carrots and 3 small stalks of celery. I have quinoa. I made some quinoa. I always like a grain in my stuffed vegetable, be it rice or quinoa, or you could put oatmeal. You could put anything in there, but I like the body that it gives to it. I've got, so I have carrots and celery. We're going to use an onion. And you know what? I think we're going to use some of that roasted garlic as well, just a little bit for good flavor. We have some cottage cheese, so I'm going to do some cottage cheese in there, and I'm going to put some mixed cheddar in there. Oh, I do have mushrooms. I forgot. We have mushrooms, so we'll slice a few mushrooms. We're going to put some yellow pepper, and we were standing in front of the refrigerator. There were 3 different types of tomatoes, so I'm going to throw some of those in as well. Again, it's up to you, whatever you like. If you don't like tomatoes, don't put tomatoes. If you don't like mushrooms, don't use mushrooms. If you love cauliflower, cut up little florets and toss them in there. It's just a vehicle for enhancing the eggplant. You're basically making a casserole. Let's see. My oven is going off on the creme brulee. So I'm going to check it. How am I going to check it? I'm going to jiggle it and see if it looks solid. Oh, it's definitely not done. It's not solid at all yet. So we're going to give it another 15, 20 minutes. And again, every oven is different. So you have to just judge your own oven and just be mindful of what you're doing. I don't think 15 minutes more is gonna burn that. Sometimes you see a little bit of a rounding on top, and that's when you know you have to take it off.
Why am
So-
I waiting for you to, I don't wait. Oops.
So anyhow, let's go back to our stuffed eggplant dish. I did cut most of the vegetables in advance. The tomatoes are going to be easy to cut. I'm going to put those in at the end. What I did in the reserve to cut here with you is the pepper, because cutting a pepper and an onion, I've always been mesmerized by celebrity chefs, how they cut it, and never knew how they did it. And going to culinary school, I learned one easy way. There are many. So with the pepper, I'm just cutting the top off, and you can use that. And then I'm cutting the bottom off. And then I'm going to make a slit anywhere. And that slit lets my chef's knife go in here. And I'm going to cut very close, very gently along the pepper. And look how beautifully that is opening up. Now, the ribs of the pepper are bitter. So you do want to cut those off as much as you can. And the way I'm doing it is just by pressing the knife ever so lightly on the pepper. And now I have a great strip of pepper that we're going to use half for this recipe. And I'm going to julienne it first in little strips. And again, you can do this at whatever thickness you want. I like generally, even though I often like things in a chunky style, I like to do things in small cuts, small dice, because in that way you get a piece of that ingredient in every bite. And I think that the flavor is better blended into the recipe. So if I was to cut this into, let's say, 1/4-inch pieces or 1/2-inch pieces, one person may get 2 or 3 slices of pepper in their recipe, in their portion rather, and another person may not get any. And by cutting it like this, I know that everybody's going to get that pepper flavor. And I'm just going to put these with the carrots. By the way, traditional European Western cooking often starts out with a mix of carrots, onion, and celery. In this case, we're putting the pepper. The carrots, onion, and celery is referred to as a mirepoix. If you omit the one of them or add the pepper, usually green pepper, you get what the Cajun chefs call the Trinity. All right, so we have that. Now the next thing that I want to show you cutting is the onion. For most of my life, I would take an onion and cut it in half like this and then start slicing it or dicing it. And I realized that that doesn't work well, and I couldn't understand why the Food Network people cut an onion in no time flat. Well, the reason is they didn't cut it horizontally, they cut it vertically, so along the ribs of the onion. So when you open it, you can see the vertical striations of the onion. I then am going to cut one end of it, the bottom end. It doesn't matter which end, but I cut the bottom end. Or maybe I guess that's the top. The bottom would be where the root is. I peel it. I'm going to do the other half as well. I've got a nice clean onion. Now here's a trick for cutting it. You see the root ball, the root there. I'm gonna take my knife like I showed you before, and I'm gonna make small incisions almost to the top. I'm not cutting all the way through, almost to the top. And you can do this any size that you want. So now I've got like a fan. You see, I've got all these little cuts, and I'm now going to turn it, and now I'm going to cut the onion perpendicularly. And I've got all my little pieces right there. Look how easy that was. Now, if I don't want to waste this, I don't have to. I have a little bit left. I can cut it like so. And, especially for a dish like this where you don't need to have everything look identical, it works well. So I'm going to put my onions in with my vegetables. I can put all these together because basically they're going to get sauteed before we put it in the oven. And I think based on what we have here, that half an onion will probably be enough. Again, if you don't like onions, don't use them. Use something else. So we have some mushrooms. Do not soak mushrooms. They are like the eggplant and they'll absorb all the liquid. You have to wash them sometimes. These happen to be extremely clean, so I'm not going to bother washing them. I'm going to save this one in case we want to stuff it with something. Well, we could stuff it with some of our eggplant mix. This is a nice big one. Let's see. So we have, I'm going to use the little ones. Just pull this out. You could use the stems. I'm just not, for no reason. You could save the stems, use them for something else if you don't want them in this recipe. And I'm going to slice them. Again, I'm bending my fingers so I don't cut them off. And just slicing that as thin as I can because I like thin mushrooms. I never buy them pre-sliced, although I think the price is the same. I like being in control, and I like to slice them how I want. Now, I'm going to not put these in with the other aromatics because they don't need to be cooked as long, and I don't want to have them break up. I'm going to put them in towards the end. Okay, so now I've got my mushrooms. The other things that I'm going to put into this eggplant dish today are some tomatoes, which I'm also going to put in towards the end. And I'm going to leave these a little chunky. I'm going to leave the seeds in it because I don't mind the moisture from the seeds. Depending on what you're doing, you might want to flip the seeds out with your finger. You can just, these are kind of small, but you just pinch them and you de-seed the tomato. So I've got a couple of these that are Campari tomatoes. I have a plum tomato. Those generally are a little meatier, as you can see. Just rough chop, because I want to be able to see these in my eggplant because they're going to give me some color and some interest in there. So I know we're at almost an hour and a half. I'm sorry, but we'll keep going. At least you've gotten an idea of how we did these, but we will adjust ourselves accordingly for the next lesson to be sure that we can accomplish everything that we want to within an hour and a half. I guess we were a little ambitious with 3 types today, but it's all good. All right, so I've got these. And so now I'm ready to go to the saute pan. And I'm putting it on high to start with. And we're gonna put some oil. You can use, you know what, I'm gonna use some olive oil. It'll give us some better flavor. And I'm just sauteing on here. Actually, I could use this. I don't have to use the olive oil. There's gonna be plenty of liquid that's gonna be rendered by the vegetables as we saute them. Any questions so far? So when you see the oil beating up a little bit, that's when you know it's getting hot. Generally, when you're frying, you want 350 degrees. But today, we're gonna put in our vegetables momentarily. I'm not waiting to measure. I know the oil is not ready because I didn't hear that sizzle. You want to hear, the oil is hot when you hear the sizzle. So I'm just cooking these vegetables down. I hear the sizzle. Can you hear it? And I'm going to cook this a little bit for it to get translucent. And then I'm going to add the eggplant, the mushrooms, and the tomatoes. Any questions? Yep, I'm hearing that nice sizzle. That's what I want. And now I'm starting to smell it a little bit too. I didn't put the garlic in yet because I don't want to burn the already roasted garlic. Again, I didn't put any salt in because the eggplant has been salted and I'm going to rinse it real quickly just before putting it in. But I think the salt content will be adequate. Smells good. Wish you were here. Hopefully one day we'll be able to do this in person or interact. Have people help me. So you can see I'm tossing it to make sure that all the vegetables are shining. That means they're being nicely coated with the oil. I'm going to add in the eggplant from this morning. I'm going to add in my mushrooms, my tomatoes. And this looks good enough to eat without having to stuff it. But when you stuff it, it'll just give it that little bit of oomph. Add some more eggplant. Now the eggplant, once it starts cooking, it's going to reduce in size, which is fine. And I have it on high, but I'm staying close by. I would not have it on high and walk away because things will start to stick. Now, if you want, one of the things you could do in this, if you don't like pieces of tomato and you want a tomato / Italian type flavor, you can use some kind of marinara sauce or any type of spaghetti sauce that you like, or pizza sauce, and mix a tablespoon or two into this mix to give it a little bit of flavor. So you can see some of the eggplants already breaking down. It happens pretty quickly. So meanwhile, I'm going to get a cookie sheet or a baking dish to get ready to put the eggplant on there and ready for stuffing. I love parchment paper. I use it all the time. I don't like cleaning cookie sheets, and the most that I ever do is rinse them because I always use parchment paper. So I'm setting these out. I like to turn them opposite ways just for even heating. Our creme brulee is going off again. Let's see how that's doing. You definitely have to be a multitasker if you're making many recipes in one day. That's where good notes come into play. Let's see how this is doing. Well, they're firming up. The little ones are definitely firming up. These are also firm, but they're still a little jiggly, so I'm just going to leave them longer. Again, every oven is a little different, so I'm not upset about it, and it's not to be, I'm not surprised either. You can see some of them have a little bit of browning on top. I really don't want that, so I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to give it maybe another 10 minutes. We've had it, I think, 40 minutes already. The recipe said 40 to 45 minutes. So I'm going to turn it and give it maybe another five more minutes in here. And remember, once it cools and you have it in the refrigerator, it is going to set even more. So I'm just being cautious since I'm not familiar with this particular oven. Okay, my eggplant here is nice and soft. So I'm feeling good about it. I'm going to leave it a little bit longer. I'm going to add my quinoa. So I'm just stirring it in. And if somebody asks a question about flavored oil, flavored garlic infused olive oil, why not? Why not try what you want? You can put at this point, you could put anything you want in, maybe a little bit of balsamic vinegar if you want to give it a little bit of sweetness. Again, experiment. Use the recipe as a jump off point and then start. The recipe that I provided you, I don't think had anything about carrots, but look how pretty that color is. And when they bake and they're going to soften, it'll just be delicious. So I've got that. I'm going to add a little pepper to it. I just think that it would be good. I'm starting to smell it. I'm starting to smell the aromatics of it. Okay. So and my quinoa is starting to brown. Let me just put some garlic in it, and then I'm going to remove it from the heat. So again, this is the roasted garlic bulb that I had this morning. I'm just gonna, well, don't want that in there, but I'm just going to squeeze. Oh, look at that. That is just beautiful. I'll put some of that in there. Take this little piece of parchment out. I'm really excited by the roasted garlic. I've never done it, but it came out really well, and I think that's going to become a staple in my kitchen. All right. I'm turning this off now because I'm starting to see things brown on the bottom. Okay, so let's go back to the workstation. I've got the eggplant mixture with the carrots and everything else here. And I'm going to put some cottage cheese in here. You can use ricotta cheese, you can use cream, milk, anything you want. I'm just going to put some in here to make it a little silkier. Any cheese you like. There's no rule. I don't think they had cottage cheese in India when they first started cooking with eggplants. If you want it cheesier, you can add more. I think for our purposes, this is enough. I think I'm going to add also just a little bit of oregano. And I understand that at the Reuben household, they like things a little spicy. So I'm going to add a little bit of cayenne. And I'm going to mix it up really well. Because I don't want one person to get the spicy eggplant and the others to feel left out. But look how easy that was. All we did was cut up vegetables, threw in some pre-cooked quinoa, again, any type of grain. You could have thrown in raw oatmeal, it wouldn't have done anything. And now I'm going to just put them on here. And you can do this with squash, with zucchini. The technique is the same. It's all the same. Now, if you use a winter squash or an acorn squash, you might want to change the profile a little bit, you know, kind of the fall profile. Add some apples and some onions, maybe cherries. Well, it's hard to get cherries in the wintertime, but craisins. I love tricking people. I love serving something like this, just like we did with the baba ganoush. Serve something savory and put in a little bit of sweetness in the form of fruit, dried fruit. Okay, I hear my creme brulee going. So as soon as I finish this, I'm going to take that out. I'm going to give it another minute. So I've got this here. Now I'm going to put some cheese on top of it. 1 second, guys. Yeah, it looks much better. I'm going to sprinkle some cheese on top of it. If you want, this would be a good place to put some sauce on top of it and then the cheese. But man, this is going to be great. And the last thing that I'm going to do on here is I'm going to go to my mise en place for my fried eggplant, and I'm going to pilfer from that tray a little bit of panko, which is not necessary, but these are seasoned panko crumbs, and just a little bit on top, and it'll give it a nice little crust. So as I take out the creme brulee, my oven's already hot, and I'm going to put these in. So if you're going to stick around with us for a little bit, you'll see what these look like in a little bit. Any questions? I guess I must be pretty good if there's no questions. So be very careful taking this out. Remember, you got hot water in here. But I can see that they're setting a little bit. I'm draining the water. So we're not going to get time to finish these. But what you do is you follow the recipe. You put them in the refrigerator. You let them cool a little bit. Put them in the refrigerator for a few hours. Right before you're going to serve them, when you sit down to dinner, take them out of the refrigerator. Let them sit at room temperature. Take some sugar and sprinkle it on top. If you have a torch, or if you have one of those electric lighters, not electric, butane stick lighters, you can get them at Home Depot or anywhere, but a torch is really the best. you hold it close to the sugar, not in one place for too long because you don't want the sugar to burn. You just want to brown it. You want to caramelize it. And you go back and forth on the sugar. If you don't have a torch, you don't have an electric igniter, what you do is you put the sugar on here. You can put them underneath the broiler for a couple minutes. You just got to keep watching it because it'll caramelize very quickly and you don't want it to burn. Take them out and leave them on the counter for a few minutes so that the dish isn't hot, and then serve them. Your guests will be thrilled. And as promised, what I would do is I would put a strawberry like that on top. Look at that. That is, I think it's beautiful. I like the red dish and the red strawberry. All right, so let me put these into the oven. And I'm willing to stay and do the fried eggplant by consensus. Do people want me to continue on that? Or do you want to save that for another time?
Lenny, why don't we take the chat and people can ask their questions, and then those people who want to stay afterwards to learn the technique for frying can stay on.
That's perfect, because we can do it another time also.
Okay, and Lenny, should we make the oven hotter than 325?
What does the recipe say? I know I'm countering all the advice that I said and don't follow the recipe. It says 350, so set it at 370.
Okay. And what they need to know is that it'll drop down. Do you
Yeah.
want it at 370?
I wanted it 370.
Okay, so we're going to, on a convection oven, it always comes in 25 degrees less. So we're going to make it at
400.
400, and it'll be 375.
I'm gonna set the timer for 15 minutes just to check on it. And at that time, we may decide to lower the temperature. And how will we decide? I'll look at the cheese and see how done the cheese is. Let's, we set it for 30 or 15? 15 is good.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions?
Everybody's so nice and quiet.
Are you still awake?
Marcy, do you have any chats to discuss?
We've gotten a lot of thank you messages for people
Okay.
saying that it looks wonderful and delicious. And I would like Lenny to just open up a bakery and make creme brulee all the time.
The bakery's open at your mom's house.
Yeah, well, I would like some, please. And someone just wrote that they're absolutely starving. I like the sign no fetching right above the creme brulee. So we can't complain about being starving, even though I understand that feeling too.
You know who that sign is directed at?
Can we get a consensus if we want to proceed with the fried eggplant?
Is vanilla extract added to the creme brulee in addition to the vanilla bean?
I did not add both, one or the other. Otherwise, it would be too overpowering. Can we get a consensus about going forward on the fried eggplant or doing it another time?
Yes, I see that some people have said, yes, please continue.
Okay, I've got the day slotted for this, so we will do that.
I just want to interject for those people that have to leave because of time constraints. Thank you so much for participating and supporting the River Garden Auxiliary and also the projects at Uptown Civitan. We are so glad that so many people signed up. And I just want to give you a little heads up while Lenny gets his fry ingredients ready, that we still have 2 more dates. The next Cooking with Lenny will be will be February 17th, and we are going to do cod. That's codfish, cod provençal, and cod limonada. The vegetable that will be featured along as a side dish will be spinach, but I think you now know Lenny, it's not just going to be spinach. He'll open with a surprise salad, and for dessert, a very delicious apple tart. So I hope that you will be with us on February 17th, and then we will meet again on March 17th for our final session, and we'll share the menu with you next time. So Lenny is getting ready to prepare the frying lesson. And I have to tell you that our kitchen smells wonderful. So again, thank you, everyone. If you registered for today's lesson, then you are already registered for lessons 2 and 3. I'm Ellen. I have your emails, and I will send those out about a week prior. Lenny?
Tell your friends, they can still register for $25, but we'll only have the next 2 lessons. If you enjoyed this one, the money is all going towards River Garden and the other
Uptown.
charities that Uptown Civitan is supporting, and make it worthwhile for us here on the planning end. We can raise as much money as possible. Thank you.
Good message, Lenny.
Okay, so let's continue. Fried eggplant. Fried anything is probably what this should be called, fried anything. And what we are going to do here is go over what is taught in culinary school as standard breading procedure. And that means that there's 3 stations. You see my 3 bowls set up. The first one is going to be flour. The second one is going to be, in this case, eggs, but you can also use buttermilk or milk. We're just using eggs today. I guess I need to do it this way. And the third one is going to be my breading. In this case, we've got some panko, but it could be anything. You know, use some breadcrumbs. I recently made, what did I make? I made something. I think it might have been chicken. I don't remember. And I used a mix of panko, and I used some ground oatmeal, and I used some nuts, and I ground it all up together and had a lovely breading. So that's your last station. The first station is going to be flour. This plain old regular all-purpose flour is good. I don't know what would happen if you use self-rising flour. It might make the breading a little puffy. I don't know. If somebody cares to experiment, because I don't get self-rising flour, somebody cares to experiment and let me know what happens, that would be great. So I've got flour. I'm not adding that much because I can always add more. And I've got 2 eggs that I'm going to scramble. The technique, or the important part of this technique to remember, is to keep the wet ingredient, the egg, separate from the breadcrumbs, because otherwise you're going to get just mush and making more of a mess than I had when I started here with this egg. I've got one more piece here. There we go. So I'm not using any salt because I had salted the eggplant already. Now, we did have in mind, we were going to show you things to do with the fried eggplant, but we're not, since we've already ran out of time, let me just tell you some of the things that we were thinking of, and maybe we'll do it another time. But the fried eggplant, once it's done, baked, fried, you can layer it with a spoonful of sauce and cheese in between each layer, and then melt it in the oven and serve it as an eggplant stack. You can take your own pizza dough or store-bought pizza dough or pita or boboli, spread some olive oil on it or some pesto or tomato sauce and place the fried eggplant pieces along with some other vegetables and cheese and stick it in the oven. You've got a nice eggplant pizza. The other thing we were going to do is we have a small ramekin and I had 2 lasagna noodles. I put the lasagna noodles, I'll show you how I did it. You definitely spray the bottom of the container. So I've sprayed it and I take 1 lasagna noodle and put it this way, pressing it down. And then I
These
take,
were pre-cooked lasagna noodles that
yeah,
you're using today.
you would have either cooked lasagna noodles. I prefer the cooked, but these are pre-cooked and will work. And then you put your lasagna, your eggplant, your whatever in there along with some ricotta cheese or whatever. And then you fold it. And then you put another layer of something, and then you fold it again, cover it with sauce and cheese, bake them, and you've got individual lasagnas you can serve like that, or after they cool, you turn them out and you get nice little lasagnas like that. So anyhow, that's those are just different things you can do with your eggplant. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm gonna flour my eggplant. And Ellen, I will clean up the kitchen with you. I'm not going to leave you. I'm just going to use the counter because it's here. And what I want to do is I don't want clumpy flour. I just want the flour to cover the eggplant to make it dry so that the egg will stick to it. If I don't have a dry surface, the egg will just slip away from the eggplant. So this is how I do it. And there's not going to be enough time for us to see the product of the baked eggplant, but basically I'm going to do the same thing to all the slices, and then the baked eggplant will get put on parchment paper in an oven. I probably say 350, 375. You can look online and see what somebody might say for baked fried eggplant, if you will. And they'll crisp up once you see them golden brown and crispy. So here we go. It's very, very thin coating of flour. I'm going to put it into the egg mixture. I'm also going to put some oil in the frying pan here. And for this purpose, I am going to use vegetable oil. And I'll probably put, a finger's worth of depth for the eggplant. So I'm going to take it here and let the egg drip off as much as possible. And now I'm going to coat it here in the breadcrumbs, taking care not to put my fingers on it because I don't want to remove the breading. Oh, I forgot I did this already. I'm going to put this right here for now. And once you finish these, you put them on a paper towel, or you can put them on a brown paper bag, whatever is convenient for you. And these will soften up immediately once we put them into that oil. I'm going to start with just these 3 for our purposes. Since we're running late, I don't want to keep everybody on. I know we're all busy and have busy schedules.
Wasn't on. So this is not on yet.
Oh, it wasn't on yet?
No.
Oh, I thought it was. All right, we're going to let the oil heat up a little bit. I thought it was on. Let's check our eggplant down below. The cheese is definitely, I'll open it. The cheese is definitely melting, and we're starting to get some nice browning on the top of the eggplant. So, and what we're waiting for is we want the shell to start to shrivel and be soft, because the shell has not cooked at all. If I know that the shell is soft, then I'm sure the carrots and everything else that has been par cooked somewhat is going to be good and soft. So this standard breading procedure is good for anything, any type of vegetable. This could even be a meal unto its own. If you want to have it look more substantial, you can cut the eggplant lengthwise, and you have a nice eggplant steak, which you could serve with some grain and a nice salad. Be a beautiful meal. You can use it for chicken breasts, schnitzel. There are some cuts of meat like minute steak that work well also. All right, I see that this is heating up already, but I'm going to give it another minute or so.
Lenny?
And again, the breading could be whatever you want it to be. Let's see, I'm gonna throw a spot of water in there, see how that oil is. If it sizzles, then I know that it'll be ready. Yep, you see that? It's sizzling. So that is perfect. So I've got my 3 slices of eggplant, and I'll get my paper towel so that I can put them on there. And like I said, this is endless uses for this. And you want to make sure that you've got that bubbling around the perimeter of the eggplant, so that you know that it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Otherwise, the oil's not hot enough, and it's just soaking that oil in, and you'll have greasy eggplant.
Lenny, can you use other vegetables like squash or zucchini
Yeah,
with this method?
absolutely. Yeah, there's, for instance, and I don't mean it to be a plug necessarily, but we'll take it as it is. At Blue Bamboo, they make what they call dragon whiskers, and basically it's fried zucchini cut into strips, which they bread and put in a fryer. We don't have the fryer here. We're just doing it as a pan saute. So our eggplant in here has been in there for 15 minutes, but it definitely is not ready. I can tell. So we're going to put it on for another. I think what I'm going to do is put the temperature down a little bit.
Okay.
And we can bring the temperature down to 350 or so.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm smelling the eggplant here cooking, and so that's why I'm turning it. And you can see on this frying pan and this stove, I have a hot spot because this one's nicely brown, and the other ones were not so toasted in the same amount of time. But there you have it, guys. That's fried eggplant. And look at the other side. I'm going to give it a few minutes before we go. I just want to cut into it so you can see that it's nice and soft. This also works really well with apples. My grandmother used to do something, and I don't know the exact recipe, but she would bread some kind of apples, and I think she would use maybe some flour and some baking powder, almost like a tempura batter. I mean, this is basically what this is. It just has the panko, so it has a heavier texture. And fried apples were delicious, and it's something she used to make at Passover time with matzah meal. So there you have it. Let's take these out. I don't want to burn them. I'm going to turn this off. And we'll cut into them so you can see how they look. One thing I forgot, which they do in all the cooking shows, is they always taste everything.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had the opportunity. All right, let's see.
Right there.
And clear the station a little bit. I don't eat with gloves.
Lenny, I also fry fish this way.
Yes, anything. That's why they call it standard breading procedure. So let's cut into this and look at it. It's soft on the inside. It's really nice. Probably could have taken. I probably had that stovetop a little bit too high because I think I would have liked it a little softer on the inside, but it was browning too much on the outside. So put it on medium to medium high heat. I was just putting it on. I put it on high because I wanted to get the oil hot quickly. But if you guys indulge me, I'll taste it and let you know. Good, really good. Oh. Good eating. As one of my favorite chefs says, her name is Lydia Bastanovich. She always ends up her show by saying, "Tutta tavola a mangiare." Everybody, welcome to the table to eat. So hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, come back, tell your friends. We can use the money for River Garden and the Ronald McDonald House and the other charities that we're supporting. Thank you.
Lenny, thank you so much. It was wonderful. I know all the women really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to next month. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
If there are any questions or